Well, it's time now for a check of what the foreign press are making of France's election results. And for that, I'm joined by Elena Casas. Hello, Elena. Now, what did they make of those results at Sunday's election now that they've had, 48 hours to digest it?
Well, it can be sometimes hard to remember while you're following the campaign here in France and the focus is so domestic. But of course, whoever wins this French election will have huge international consequences. That's what the Independents had headlined on today. They've gone for fear returns to the Eurozone as a headline. Now, that's partly because they blame the markets plummeting yesterday, partly on Hollande's having won and on fear in the markets that that will then cause France's interest rates to soar and make France into the next victim of the euro crisis. But also, fear is what's at the key of Marine Le Pen's having scored such a high vote, they say, on the inside. The markets might be afraid of what Hollande might do to the French economy, but the French are clearly afraid of the consequences of further austerity measures on their own economy. That's one of the main reasons that pushed them to vote for Marine Le Pen. Now, of course, some on the EU, particularly in Germany, some foreign politicians have been concerned about Hollande's rise, particularly his desire to renegotiate the budget treaty and what that might mean for the future of the euro. But that seems to have been eclipsed, rather, by their concern about just why Marine Le Pen is doing so well. As Der Spiegel puts it, the spokesperson, rather, for Angela Merkel yesterday said that while Germany feels confident it can work with Hollande, it's extremely alarmed about what is going on in France that actually led Marine Le Pen to do so very well. The German magazine says that Sarkozy is partly to blame for this, of course, by promising economic reforms that were meant to modernise France and then, apart from some small exceptions like the rise in the retirement age, essentially failing to follow through with them, which is why a lot of those voters who feel betrayed by him have decided to then turn to Marine Le Pen. But as the left-wing German paper, the Berliner Zeitung, points out today, there's also some responsibility on the left for Marine Le Pen's having done so well, because a lot of the people voting for her were young people, working class people, constituencies perhaps taken for granted in the past by the socialists, but for whom François Hollande didn't really have anything to say. And as a result, he should feel ashamed as well, they say, that those voters turned to Marine Le Pen.
All right, we're going to stick with Marine Le Pen because obviously there's a lot of fascination surrounding her in the foreign press. What do the newspapers say that her voters are likely to do next now that she's no longer in the campaign?
Well, The Guardian has been to her fief, if you like, her home territory in the Pas-de-Calais, where she came top of the polls and has been talking to voters there about why they chose her firstly and then who they might pick in the second round. A lot of them are saying that for them it isn't about immigration. It's about unemployment, it's about spending power, it's about them wanting to return to the franc because they feel they've been ripped off by the transition to the euro. And as a result, it can't necessarily be taken for granted that they will now go and vote for Sarkozy because they think that it's him that's ripped them off in preferring the rich and the bankers ahead of France's ordinary working classes. Some of them say they will even vote for François Hollande, some of them because they feel he's going to cut fewer French jobs than Sarkozy will, and others because they actually want to bring down the UMP. Now, as the Spanish paper El País explains here on its front page, that's part of Marine Le Pen's essential strategy now. She's hoping that the UMP will eventually collapse if Sarkozy does very badly in the second round, and that thus she can position herself as the only leader of a right-wing opposition to President Hollande. In El País, they look at some of the international examples for this, for very right-wing parties coming from the very extreme right and becoming part of a right-wing coalition that eventually supported a government. Look at Gianfranco Fini in Italy, for example, who took a party that was originally neo-Nazi, really, and then gave it an image change, changed its name, and became a key part of the Berlusconi coalition that propped him up for a long time.
Indeed, those pictures there on El País as well, the torn up poster campaigns that you're seeing all around Paris right now. Now, you were mentioning there that not the only far-right party to have surfaced in Europe in recent years. What else has the paper's got on the score of far-right parties in Europe at large?
Yes, of course, they've also done well in recent years in Austria, in Scandinavia, in the Netherlands, where populist Geert Wilders has just brought down the government there. So The Guardian is looking at what makes Marine Le Pen, if anything, different from those other right-wing groups. They point out two things, really. Firstly, the party's heritage comes even further to the right than that in Austria and the Netherlands. Her father had a strong record of anti-Semitism, but also that she's picked up the clothes of the left on economic matters more than other right-wing populist groups. And the euro crisis, they say, is changing the face of the far right around Europe. It's not just immigration that's now their central topic. It's more than anything pulling out the euro and going back to national currencies, which are becoming more and more popular as citizens around Europe say, well, all this has been done to preserve the euro. It's not helping me.
All right. Elena Casas, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date with the international press.